The end of the world. The last dawn. The sirens blared through the city like a war cry, echoing off the towering buildings. The ground trembled, as if an ancient beast was stirring beneath the surface, and the once familiar skyline was silhouetted against a fiery, crimson sky. It wasn't just an earthquake, not just a storm. This was something far worse. This was the end of the world. Chapter 1. The First Sign. Alexander Alex Carter, a civil engineer from New York City, stood frozen on the Brooklyn Bridge, watching the sunset on what felt like the last day on Earth. He had worked on dozens of infrastructure projects, repairing and building bridges across the city, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. The distant horizon, normally a peaceful blend of city lights and fading twilight, now burned with an ominous red glow. The sky seemed to crack apart, dark clouds rolling in faster than nature could explain. "Alex, we need to talk," came the urgent voice of Max Thompson, his college friend and a well-known geologist. Max had spent the last decade studying tectonic activity and the consequences of climate change. But when Alex picked up the phone, the fear in Max's voice made his blood run cold. "This is it, Alex. The tectonic plates are shifting in ways we've never seen before. It's not just an earthquake. It's the whole planet. We're running out of time." Alex gripped the phone tighter, staring down at the surging waters below. The normally calm East River was churning like a storm was brewing beneath the surface. "You're saying the Earth is breaking apart?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. This isn't a normal event. It's like the core is destabilizing, and it's starting to affect everything. The weather, the oceans, the atmosphere. Alex, you need to get your family and get to higher ground. There might be a government safe zone outside the city, but I don't know how long it will hold." Alex hung up, his mind reeling. End-of-the-world predictions were things people joked about. But now, as the ground beneath his feet shifted unnaturally, the weight of it hit him. This wasn't a drill. Chapter 2. The decision, back home, in their small apartment on the Lower East Side, his wife Emma was packing with shaky hands. She tried to stay calm for their son Jason, but it was clear the news had shaken her. Jason, just 5 years old, sat on the couch clutching his favorite toy car, unaware of the full danger outside. "Where are we going, Daddy?" Jason asked, his bright blue eyes filled with confusion rather than fear. Alex knelt in front of him, forcing a reassuring smile. "We're going on a little trip, buddy. Somewhere safe. I promise." He turned to Emma, who was now frantically gathering supplies, water bottles, canned food, blankets. "Max says there might be a government shelter somewhere outside the city," Alex said, his voice quiet but urgent. "We have to leave now." Emma paused, looking up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "What if we don't make it? What if there's no shelter?" Alex grabbed her shoulders, holding her gaze. "We don't have a choice. Staying here is a death sentence. We'll figure it out. Together." She nodded, but the fear didn't leave her face. Jason watched them, sensing the tension but too young to understand the full scope of what was happening. Alex took a deep breath. They had to move quickly. Chapter 3. The Exodus. The drive out of the city was far worse than Alex had anticipated. The streets, usually clogged with the normal hustle of New York City, were now packed with panicked civilians, all desperate to escape. Traffic jams stretched for miles. People abandoned their cars, running in all directions as tremors shook the ground beneath them. Fires had already broken out in several neighborhoods. Buildings, once towering symbols of human achievement, now looked like fragile structures about to crumble. Alex, Emma, and Jason sat in their SUV, barely crawling through the chaos. The honking of horns and the screams of terrified people echoed around them. Every few minutes, the earth shook, sending more people into fits of panic. Cars skidded across the road, and streetlights flickered ominously. "Alex," Emma whispered, staring out the window. "The bridge. It's gone." He followed her gaze. The Queensboro Bridge, one of the primary exits out of the city, had collapsed into the river, its metal frame twisted and broken. The realization hit them like a punch to the gut. They were trapped. "We need another route," Alex muttered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His heart pounded in his chest. He pulled out his phone, frantically searching for an alternative path. Suddenly, Jason screamed from the back seat. "Daddy, look!" Alex barely had time to react. From the corner of his eye, he saw a massive crack splitting the road in front of them. The asphalt crumbled as if some invisible force was tearing it apart. Without thinking, Alex swerved the car, narrowly avoiding the fissure as it snaked across the road, swallowing cars and people in its wake. The SUV skidded to a stop. Breathing heavily, Alex turned to Emma. "We can't stay on the main roads. We need to go by foot." Emma nodded, her face pale but resolute. "Let's go." Chapter 4. Into the Unknown. Leaving the car behind, Alex hoisted Jason onto his back, gripping Emma's hand tightly as they made their way through the city on foot. Every block was a battlefield. Fires raged uncontrollably, smoke rising in thick black columns. People pushed and shoved, fighting for survival as buildings groaned under the strain of the Earth's fury. "Stay close!" Alex shouted over the chaos. They navigated through the debris, trying to avoid the stampede of panicked citizens. Somewhere nearby, a gas station exploded, the shockwave knocking them to the ground. Alex shielded Jason as debris rained down around them. Emma coughed, pulling herself up. "How much further?" "I don't know," Alex said, looking around wildly. They were in Midtown now, surrounded by the skeletons of skyscrapers. He spotted an old subway entrance up ahead. "We can take the underground tunnels. It might be safer down there." They descended into the subway, the air thick with dust and darkness. The tunnels stretched out like a labyrinth, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. Occasionally, they passed other survivors, huddled in corners, their faces pale and drawn. "We just need to keep moving," Alex said, though even he wasn't sure where they were going anymore. Chapter 5. The Underground Descent. The subway tunnel was dark, with only the dim glow of emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. The usual hum of trains and chatter of commuters was replaced by an oppressive silence, broken only by distant rumbles of the crumbling city above them. The further they went, the more desolate the tunnel became. Jason, still clinging to Alex's back, whispered, "Daddy, is it scary?" Alex's throat tightened. "It's okay, buddy. We're safe for now." Emma was breathing heavily beside him, the strain of their escape showing in her every step. "How much longer?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I don't know," Alex admitted, but he refused to stop moving. They had to keep going. Suddenly, the tunnel trembled. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling, and a deafening crack echoed through the underground. Alex's heart jumped as the tunnel began to collapse behind them. "Run!" he shouted. Chapter 6. The Chase. With the tunnel caving in behind them, Alex grabbed Emma's hand and sprinted forward. Jason clung tightly to his back as they ran through the darkened passageways. Behind them, the earth roared as the tunnel collapsed, dust and debris chasing them down the narrow corridor. "Faster!" Alex urged, his muscles screaming in protest as they fled through the dimly lit labyrinth. Finally, they reached a service exit, a small, rusted door at the side of the tunnel. Alex slammed it open, and they tumbled into the open air, gasping for breath. Above them, the sky had turned a sickly orange, the sun hidden behind a thick veil of ash and smoke. The earth trembled beneath their feet, as if the entire planet was groaning in pain. "We're not safe yet," Emma said, her voice trembling. Alex looked around. In the distance, a military convoy was moving slowly through the streets, helping to evacuate survivors. Relief surged through him. They still had a chance. Chapter 7. The Final Struggle. The ground rumbled violently as the planet seemed to tear itself apart. A new series of cracks split the road ahead, while buildings collapsed around them like sandcastles caught in the tide. A wall of dust and debris rose behind them, darkening the sky even further. "Come on!" Alex shouted, his voice hoarse as they made a desperate dash towards the military convoy. Soldiers were frantically ushering people into trucks, their faces grim as the chaos unfolded around them. But just as they reached the convoy, the ground beneath their feet gave way. A giant fissure split the earth, and lava, glowing bright orange, bubbled up from beneath. It flowed towards them with terrifying speed, incinerating everything in its path. Emma screamed, pulling Jason closer. "We're not going to make it!" Alex gritted his teeth, pushing them forward with every ounce of strength he had left. "Yes, we are." They leaped over cracks in the ground, dodging falling debris, racing against the surging lava. Just as it seemed the molten flow would consume them, they reached the military truck. A soldier reached out, grabbing Alex's hand and pulling them to safety. The truck roared to life, speeding away from the destruction. Chapter 8. The New World days turned into weeks. Alex, Emma, and Jason were now living in a vast underground facility, a bunker built by the government to house survivors. The world above was gone, swallowed by earthquakes, fires, and floods. The few remaining survivors were forced to adapt to a new reality, a world buried beneath the surface. Alex stood at the entrance of the bunker, looking out at the barren, shattered landscape. The sky was no longer blue. It was a permanent gray, filled with ash and clouds. The world as they knew it had ended. But as he turned back to his wife and son, safe for now, he realized something. They had survived, together, and as long as they had each other, there was still hope. "Are we going to be okay, Daddy?" Jason asked, his voice small but filled with trust. Alex knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, buddy, we'll be okay." They had survived the end of the world. Now they would face the challenge of rebuilding a new one, together.